Ask a woman a question that stirs her curiosity, and she'll think about you for a moment. Ask a woman a question that touches her desire, and she'll think about you all night. There are questions that entertain. There are questions that connect. But there are also questions that create tension. Emotional, sensual, psychological tension. The kind of questions that don't feel sexual, but make her body feel something. The kind of questions that feel like a whisper under the surface. The kind of questions that flip a switch in her mind and make her wonder about you when you're not even around. These are the 7 questions that high-awareness men, calm, focused, intentional men, use to plant thoughts in her head without ever saying anything explicit. Let's begin. Most men talk too much. They try to impress with stories, accomplishments, even charm. But the men women remember, the ones they think about late at night, are the ones who say very little, but when they do speak, it hits somewhere deep. This video isn't about being smooth or slick. It's about learning how to ask the kind of questions that trigger attraction without saying anything seductive directly. Questions that slide past her social filter and touch the part of her that wants to feel something real, emotionally, sensually, and intimately. Playboys don't talk a lot. They listen. They ask the right questions. They speak calmly. They understand how tension works. They don't need a dozen compliments to show interest, just one sentence that makes her wonder what it would feel like to be chosen by a man like that. If you support this channel, you help more men tap into this power, the kind that changes the way women feel when they're around you, even when nothing physical has happened yet. Like, share, and comment to keep making this knowledge accessible. You're not just helping yourself, you're helping other men break free from approval chasing and learn what real masculine presence feels like. Number 1. If I gave you 5 seconds of freedom, what would you do with me? This question is like a drop of red wine on a white shirt. It catches attention. It creates a mess. In the best way. It disrupts the usual flow of conversation and invites her to step into a moment of imagined freedom, framed through you. This isn't a pickup line. It's an invitation to play. And more importantly, it's designed to bypass her logical filters and awaken the impulse hiding underneath her polite exterior. Most men never create space for this side of her to emerge. They either keep the conversation too safe, afraid of turning her off, or they go too far too fast and seem thirsty. But the man who asks this question with calm, amused confidence, like he already knows she's tempted but isn't in a rush, creates something unforgettable. The beauty of this question is in the contrast it delivers. On the surface, it's simple. It's even innocent. But the moment it lands, her mind fills in the blanks. 5 seconds. Freedom. With you. It's suggestive without being sexual. It's open-ended enough for her to respond playfully or seriously, depending on her comfort level and her emotional state. If she's feeling bold, she might flirt right back. If she's intrigued, she might laugh nervously and avoid the question. If she's shy but curious, she'll try to deflect, which is exactly when you pause, hold eye contact, and let the energy sit in the space between you. You're not pressuring. You're not asking her to act. You're just inviting her imagination to go somewhere it rarely gets permission to go. And once it does, the attraction becomes internal. She begins to feel activated. And it's not because you touched her or leaned in close. It's because you gave her permission to picture something she normally hides. Something impulsive, unfiltered, private. Now the key here is in your tone. You don't ask this like a guy fishing for a sexual fantasy. You ask it like a man who's calm, grounded, and slightly amused by her reaction. Your energy says, "I'm curious what's under the surface. Show me if you dare." This is how you shift her experience from ordinary to emotional memory. She won't remember what drink she ordered. She won't remember what playlist was on. She'll remember this question. And she'll remember the heat behind it, even if she never answered. Sometimes she'll answer in a joke. "I'd push you into traffic," she might say, laughing. "You just smile." "That says a lot about your flirting style," you reply, with that relaxed, slow voice that lets her know. You're not rattled, you're enjoying her walls, and she starts to enjoy lowering them. This isn't a test, it's not a trap, it's a spark. And once a woman associates your presence with emotional freedom, boldness, and playful unpredictability, she stops categorizing you with every other man who just wants to be liked. You've become the man who leads her out of her script, and if she trusts herself enough to answer honestly, even halfway, you'll see it in her body language. A deeper breath, a softer gaze, a shift in posture. Her world has tilted slightly, because for a moment you made her feel something she doesn't normally get to feel. Desire without demand, temptation without pressure, play without shame. That's the power of one question, when it's delivered by a man who knows exactly what he's doing. Number 2, what do you think I'd do to you if no one else was watching? This question is a slow fuse. It doesn't force desire, it activates it, in her own mind. That's what makes it so powerful. It invites her to imagine something you haven't even described. You're not pushing a fantasy on her. You're asking her to create one for herself, with you at the center. This isn't a pickup line. This isn't vulgar. When you say it with control, with the calm intensity of a man who's not afraid of silence, you allow her to play out a scene in her head. And she becomes the director of that scene. The setting, the tone, the mood, and most importantly, your role in it. That's the key. When she imagines your energy, your presence, your hands, your voice, doing something only the two of you know about, she isn't reacting to you, she's creating you. And in doing that, she begins bonding to the version of you that lives in her fantasy. That's deeper than attraction, that's imprinting. But here's what separates the amateurs from the men who truly embody Stoic psychology. Your delivery must be grounded. No grin, no lean in, no hungry eyes. You say it slow, low, like it's not a challenge, like it's an idea that simply floated across your lips without effort. What do you think I'd do to you if no one else was watching? And then, you say nothing else. Let it linger, let it sting. Let her shift, let her avoid your gaze or stare back or fidget with her hair. All of that is her energy trying to process. And that's where your power lives. In the silence. Because if she answers, it doesn't matter what she says. It's not about the content, it's about the fact that she went there. With you. She used her imagination to invite you into a scene where she's exposed, or playful, or flirty, or raw. That tells you everything. And if she doesn't answer, that's even better. The tension grows. Her mind loops the question hours later. You've planted a line that doesn't fade when the conversation ends. It deepens, it echoes. It repeats in her quiet moments, in her shower, in her bed, in her mind. Because she wasn't told what to feel. She was asked to decide what you represent when the rules are gone. And that is one of the most attractive spaces a man can hold. You're not the guy who pushes. You're not the guy who asks for permission. You're the man who creates an emotional vacuum, one where her own desire grows because you had the nerve to let her imagine it herself. And this question? It proves you trust the chemistry enough not to control it. That's power. That's rare. And once she answers, or even silently reacts, you're not reacting big. You're nodding, holding it, letting her see that you knew there was more under the surface. That moment becomes one of the most intimate experiences she's had in a long time. And no one touched anyone. Nothing was said explicitly. It was all felt. Because the most seductive man doesn't perform. He plants a thought and lets her make it bloom. Number 3. What part of your body responds first when you're turned on? This question is bold. Director, loaded with tension. And if you ask it with stillness, with zero rush, zero smirk, and total calm, it becomes one of the most psychologically seductive lines you can ever say to a woman. Why? Because it does something no casual flirty banter ever does. It brings her into her body, without touching her. Think about that. In one sentence, you're guiding her attention away from words, ideas, distractions, and gently forcing her to tune into how she feels. Not emotionally, physically, sensually, privately. You're not talking about sex directly. You're not asking what she likes in bed. You're simply asking her to explore what her body naturally does and how it signals desire. Now here's where this becomes powerful. Most women have never been asked this. They've had their bodies admired, objectified, maybe even obsessed over. But few men ever speak to their internal responses. That's where her truth lives. That's what makes this question feel personal and unique. When you ask this, she won't answer quickly. She'll hesitate. She'll look away. She might smile, or challenge you, or deflect with a laugh. That's normal. She's caught between curiosity and exposure. And that's exactly what you want. Not to pressure her, but to awaken something she rarely thinks about. And it matters how you ask this. Your tone should be low, slow, nonchalant, as if you're asking what flavor of wine she prefers. You're not chasing an erotic response. You're letting her decide if she trusts the moment enough to meet you in it. If she answers, no matter what she says, my neck, my breath, my thighs, my pulse speeds up, don't react with excitement or validation. Stay centered. Nod slowly. Let it land. Maybe repeat it back in a whisper. Your neck? That's it. The energy will speak louder than any reply. What happens next is subtle, transformative. She starts feeling her own arousal. Not because of what you did, but because you guided her into awareness. That awareness becomes linked to you, your voice, your eye contact, your control. Now, every time she notices that part of her body respond, even later, even alone, your question echoes. You've now created an association, a body memory loop. She doesn't just like you. She doesn't just enjoy your conversation. Her nervous system has started associating your presence with physical stimulation. And that is one of the most powerful forms of desire. You didn't touch her. You didn't even compliment her. You asked a question that most men are too awkward, too immature, or too fast to even consider. And you held the moment like a man who's not shocked by feminine energy, but who welcomes it. This is what Stoic playboys understand. It's not about getting reactions. It's about activating emotions and letting them unfold. Slowly, naturally, without pressure. So when you ask this question, you're not just creating tension, you're creating a trigger. And if you stay calm, stay grounded, and let her fill the space between you, she'll begin to crave your presence without even knowing why, because the part of her that responds first just got claimed by your energy. Number 4. What's the one thing you're always drawn to in men? This question cuts through performance and goes straight to the pattern in her psyche. Every woman has one, a recurring emotional imprint she's unknowingly drawn to. And when you ask her about that, calmly, directly, you're asking her to reveal her desire blueprint. You're not just asking what she likes. You're inviting her to speak the truth most men are afraid to hear. She'll pause. she'll try to give the socially acceptable answer first. Confidence? Humor? Maybe ambition. But if you stay quiet after that, if you hold your gaze just a moment longer and say, "Really? That's the first thing?" you'll see the shift. She'll smile or smirk, or her eyes will flick away. That's when the real answer starts to rise. Because this question isn't about logic, it's about longing. Maybe she's drawn to men who don't rush. Maybe it's the calm in a man's silence. Maybe it's the way some men lead a moment without saying much. Whatever it is, when she names it, she's not just talking about others. She's talking about what she wants to feel again. And that's where your power is. You're not asking so you can pretend to be that man. You're asking because the more she reflects, the more she mentally connects that pattern to you. If you're grounded, if you're already embodying part of what she's describing, her attraction builds instantly. It's unconscious, it's undeniable. The beauty of this question is that it forces her into emotional memory. She starts recalling how that type of man made her feel. Her body remembers. Her breath changes. She softens or sharpens. But either way, she's no longer in neutral. And most importantly, you're not trying to match her answer. You're holding your center. You're letting her feel the tension between her ideal and your presence. Sometimes, the most seductive thing a man can do is listen without adjusting. Just receive her answer. Let it land. Let her feel that you're unaffected, because the man who doesn't need to become what she wants is usually what she ends up wanting. This question also opens the door for a very subtle yet powerful follow-up. Do you think that kind of man notices you the same way? You don't ask it with arrogance. You ask it with stillness, like a mirror. And suddenly, the desire she's describing turns into personal introspection. She starts wondering not just what she wants, but whether she's worthy of what she just described. That's when emotional tension reaches a new level. That's when you become more than just a conversation partner. You become a reflection of her deeper desires. And that, more than anything, is what stays with her after the conversation ends. Number 5. If I knew the real you, what would surprise me most? This question does something most men never attempt. It asks a woman to reveal her mystery, not her performance. When you ask this, you're not asking her to list her interests, job, or hobbies. You're asking for something behind the mask, the version of her that most people don't get to see. And that's what creates attraction, not surface-level chemistry, but the emotional thrill of being seen. When a man can cut through small talk and ask her to expose her uniqueness, something powerful happens. She doesn't just answer, she feels the question. Her body responds before her mind does. You're offering her something women rarely get, the opportunity to drop the script. And that's where desire lives, not in facts, but in the emotional shift between safety and surprise. Now, how you ask this matters. You don't smile too much. You don't laugh. You hold a calm tone. You look at her like you already sense the answer, and you're simply giving her space to say it. That stillness is what amplifies the question's effect. You're not just curious, you're leading the energy. She might pause, she might tilt her head, she might give a playful, safe answer. That's fine. But the key is this. Don't rush to respond. Let the silence expand after she answers. Keep eye contact. That quiet, that moment of emotional exposure is where her mind starts to race. She begins to ask herself, what does he see that others don't? And the moment a woman starts wondering what you're picking up on, you've entered her headspace. That's the goal, not to impress her, but to give her a space where she impresses herself by showing you a piece of her that feels too real for everyday life. This is how tension is built. Not through pressure, not through game, through emotional permission, delivered by a man who doesn't need to talk loud to make her feel deeply. Number 6. Would you rather be understood or devoured? This question is a mirror, not a cute game, not surface-level flirtation. A direct window into what lives at the center of her deepest romantic conflict. Every high-awareness man knows this. Most women carry two cravings, the craving to be seen and the craving to be taken. They want to be cherished, known, emotionally safe. But they also want to be claimed, ignited, ravished by a man who doesn't lose himself while doing it. A man who can offer presence and power in the same breath. This question places that tension in front of her, gently, like a candle flickering in a dark room. It lets her feel both parts of herself rise, the emotional and the sensual, and then dares her to choose. How you ask this changes everything. You don't ask with a smirk or a raised eyebrow, you ask with stillness, eye contact that doesn't blink, a voice that doesn't beg, a tone that doesn't waver. You deliver it like a man who's not afraid of either answer, because you understand both. When you ask a woman if she'd rather be understood or devoured, you're offering her more than a question. You're offering her a choice between emotional intimacy and erotic surrender, and whichever one she chooses tells you exactly how she wants to be led. If she says, "Understood," don't flinch. Don't act too deep. Simply nod. "That makes sense," you say. Most people don't take the time to listen to what's not being said. Now she knows you're safe, you get it? She can be soft around you. She can open. If she says, "Devoured," your smile changes. Just slightly. "Good answer," you say, letting the silence stretch. Not everyone's honest about that. Now she knows you're not afraid of her intensity. She can bring fire to the table, and you won't retreat. She feels invited to be her full self. But the real magic happens when she pauses, when she can't pick one, when she says, "Can I choose both?" That's when the room changes. That's when her eyes soften. That's when you lean back, look at her and say, "That's where things get interesting." You've just named a truth she lives with, but rarely voices. That truth becomes associated with you, not because you forced it, but because you had the emotional intelligence to ask for it. Not with ego, not with aggression, but with mastery of presence. This is not a trick. This is depth. A man who speaks to a woman's internal contradiction is a man who bypasses attraction and triggers emotional fusion. He becomes not just desirable, he becomes unforgettable. She won't tell her friends about this question directly, but she'll mention you. She'll describe you as different, as someone who made her feel exposed, challenged, and safe all at once. And that combination, it's rare, it's primal, it's addicting. This question doesn't just create desire, it anchors identity. It shows her that she can bring her entire self to you, the one who wants to be seen and the one who wants to be swallowed whole. You don't need to play games. You just need to ask one question and hold her gaze while her heart decides how she wants to answer it. Number 7. Do you believe in tension that doesn't need words? This question doesn't ask for a reaction. It asks for recognition. It points at something already alive between you, a subtle hum, a charged air, a pulse underneath the silence, and gives it a name. You're not asking to impress her. You're offering her a mirror. Do you feel this too? This is the moment most men never reach. They talk, they joke, they try, but they never trust silence. They never develop the awareness to notice when a woman's breath gets shallower, when her gaze holds longer, when the space between words starts to heat up. But you do. And when you ask, Do you believe in tension that doesn't need words? You're not just testing her, you're leading her, gently, confidently, into a state of emotional and physical awareness. A state where her mind stops and her senses take over. What makes this question so powerful is how true it is. Every woman has felt this tension before, once or twice in her life. And when she feels it again, when she feels it around you, she doesn't know whether to explain it or escape it. You offering this question gives her permission to accept it. And she will. She may answer, yes. She may nod. Or she may say nothing at all, which is its own answer. Because this kind of tension doesn't ask to be fixed. It asks to be felt, slowly, quietly, inhale by inhale, glance by glance. When you're sitting close, not touching, not speaking, and yet everything feels alive. That's the kind of experience that brands itself in her memory. It's not the words that get her, it's your presence, your patience, your emotional maturity. Most men rush tension, afraid it'll slip away. But you don't. You let it sit. You feed it nothing but your calm, your steadiness, your decision to be the flame, not the spark. When you ask this final question, she realizes something. You're not performing. You're feeling. You're noticing what most ignore. And that's why she's drawn to you, because you see the invisible, name the unspoken, and make her feel something real in a world full of noise. This question isn't a close, it's a gateway to deeper presence, to richer chemistry, to the kind of connection that lingers in her body long after the lights dim. Because once you ask it, and hold the silence that follows, she'll feel it, she'll remember it. And she'll realize she's never felt that with anyone else. You've just been handed the blueprint, not for charm, not for manipulation, but for real psychological impact. You've learned how a few simple, well-placed questions, delivered with control, presence, and masculine calm, can trigger something deeper in a woman than compliments, conversation, or performance ever could. This wasn't about game. This was about awareness, about knowing when to speak and when to hold silence, about asking questions that don't entertain, but invite her imagination, about becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to say much, because his energy speaks before he does. Let's recap the 7 questions playboys ask. Not because they're clever, but because they carry weight. If I knew the real you, what would surprise me most? What's the one thing you're always drawn to in men? If I gave you 5 seconds of freedom, what would you do with me? What part of your body responds first when you're turned on? Would you rather be understood or devoured? What do you think I'd do to you if no one else was watching? Do you believe in tension that doesn't need words? Each of these questions isn't about the answer. It's about the space they create, the invitation they represent, the reflection they trigger. They turn you into a psychological experience, not just another guy she met. Because the men who create unforgettable tension don't just speak. They lead. They hold. They guide. They ask things that touch something beneath the surface. And when you learn to do that, you don't chase, you don't convince, you don't compete. You simply become the man who asks the right question and lives in her mind long after the night is over. If you made it this far, if you felt your mindset shift, I want to see you below. Drop the word unstoppable in the comments. Let me know who's walking this path of silent power. Let me know who's not here for tricks, but for transformation. Like this video if you want more deep, grounded, Stoic-centered content like this. Subscribe if you're building a version of yourself that women feel before you speak. Share this with one man who's still stuck in his head. and ready to come into his presence. By supporting this channel, you're not just helping it grow, you're helping men around the world discover how to connect without performing, attract without chasing, and lead without losing themselves. You're helping this message reach the men who are ready to rise. So if this spoke to you, then speak to someone else. Support the mission, share the video, carry this energy. Because this isn't about becoming a player, it's about becoming a man she'll never forget. See you in the next one.